intro?
Yeah, welcome. What we do here is learn so that we can teach and progress as people. Our general concepts that we're going after are these are the ideas that are important to us and what we want to help other people enable. First off is empathy, understanding the feelings of others. And Murph, if you want to do the full definition and tell us what you think about it. And then we'll do the concepts after this that we help to help people progress, and Andy will read those.
Okay, wait, say it one more time. Wait,
yeah.
What am I reading? Yes, the ability to understand and share the feelings of others.
Inclusivity, helping people feel welcome.
The practice or policy of providing equal access to opportunities and resources for people who might otherwise be excluded or marginalized, such as having a physical or an intellectual disability or belonging to other minority groups.
Accessibility, making sure everyone can participate.
Accessibility is the ability of people to access and use information, services, and products regardless of their abilities.
That needs editing.
Yep. Probably. Equal opportunity, giving everyone an equal shot.
Equal opportunity is the
attribution error. If they did it, they caused it. The tendency to overemphasize personal characteristics and ignore situational factors. Saying someone is lazy because they are poor, ignoring systemic issues. Substitution error. Accepting an answer to another question. When faced with a difficult question, people often substitute it with a simpler one and answer that one instead. Saying an ideology has a mandate because a candidate won an election. False equivalency. Two things seem the same but aren't. When two things are compared as now we've all got you. Now you've got everybody's attention.
Oh, what? I'm so sorry.
No, I think.
Rainsy,
wait.
Is your mic? Hold on. You might need to mute yourself.
What happened?
Mute yourself.
I think you're just hitting a vapor.
Your fan is going nuts.
Oh, my bad. It ran into the mic. My bad.
It's okay.
Zero-sum thinking. If they win, I lose. The belief that one's gain must come at another's loss. Thus, no mutual benefit is possible. Think that if minimum wage goes up, my wage goes down in value. That should be thinking.
Yeah. Right. Beep, beep, beep. There we go. And it broke it.
Is that how you feel, Andy, when you're talking to people?
What?
Zero sum. No, I'm asking you, like, we've been in rooms together. Do you feel that way in last that you just talked about?
What about minimum wage?
No, there's zero sum. If you have a different opinion from
handful.
Wait, so is that kind of like conscience, where you kind of have like good or bad?
No.
No? Okay.
It's more of saying, hey, I like pineapple on my pizza, but this person doesn't, so therefore they are gross. Evil. That's black or white thinking.
It's not good.
Yeah, that is not good.
The Gish Gallop, my particular favourite, making many arguments to run away. A debate tactic where one overwhelms an opponent with a rapid series of arguments without regard for their accuracy or strength, making it difficult to refute each one. Saying climate change isn't real and is good for plants, and we can't do anything about it. Correlation and causation. One followed the other, so caused the other. Assuming that because you can come up with a story
about my Minecraft world.
No, not today. Sorry.
Yeah. Assuming that because you can come up with a story about how one thing causes the other, it does.
Sorry. I'm in a tent right now. It's kind of.
Okay.
Yeah, so fucking
You're in a tent.
Oh, here. How do I do that?
You
living up
muted
to your name.
before.
No.
I'm just kicking them.
There
They're
you
not
go.
blocked, they're
It's
just
done.
kicked.
Arguing not being married is why people are poor, rather than poor people can't afford to marry. Afford
Well,
to get married.
That's not really a good example of that, though. I don't think.
It's not. It's really not. Argument from incredulity. I can't imagine it, so it can't be true. Concluding something must be false because it is difficult to understand or believe. No universal healthcare because how would that work? State where repeated failures lead to the belief that one cannot change their situation. Not voting because they have all the power.
Cool.
Do you know Dr. Sayers is gone, by the way?
Yeah, I know. I need to find any little kids in here. Raise your hand.
I don't think that's
That sometimes that works.
Speak up.
Let's see.
I am the storm that is abroad!
There you go. You're right.
Oh, couldn't help
There you go.
himself.
There we go.
I'm just,
Moving the goalposts, changing
just
the
leaving
criteria
it
as soon
boring.
as they are met, demanding more
plenty of
or
other rooms.
different evidence
And
after the
Okay, that's fine.
hasty
I'd rather play
generalization,
Wallace and Gromit. So
assuming that
I would do.
assuming what's true for a few is true for all, drawing a conclusion about an entire group based on a small or underrepresented sample, concluding that because some immigrants commit crimes, all immigrants are criminals.
Okay.
That should have all in it. Yeah. Unjustified appeal to authority. Someone in power said it, so it must be true. Unjustified appeal to authority is a fallacy when those who use it do not provide any justification to support their argument. Believing in a dragon researcher you heard on Joe Rogan, even though the researcher is a chiropractor. Gambler's fallacy. Past outcomes affect future probability. The gambler's fallacy is a cognitive bias that occurs when somebody believes that the probability of an event changes after a series of outcomes. Believing that if we just keep trying the same risky policy, eventually it will balance out the failures. Strawman. Attacking an exaggerated or misrepresented version of an argument. Misrepresenting an opponent's argument, often by exaggerating or simplifying it, then attacking. An appeal to tradition fallacy assumes that the old way of thinking was correct when it was introduced, and that it's still correct today. Rejecting the metric system because customary is customary. Anchoring and adjustment. Relying too heavily on the first piece of information. A cognitive bias where the initial piece of information serves as a reference point for subsequent decisions. Believing a pair of shoes at Neiman Marcus is good deal at $100 because it was originally priced at $200, even if it was for sale at $50 at Target. That one went right over my head. No True Scotsman, my entire favourite.
As I say.
Changing the criteria to exclude counterexamples. A logical fallacy where someone dismisses counterexamples to a universal claim by changing the definition to exclude them, thus projecting their original assertion from rebuttal. No Nike fan would ever buy Adidas, when told about a Nike fan who did, replying, well, no true Nike fan would do that. The idea is no true Scotsman would wear underwear when wearing a kilt. But let me tell you, as a true Scotsman,
Nike fan
I
would say
absolutely
Nike.
do wear underwear when I wear a kilt.
So
Fluid.
you're not a true Scotsman.
Well, that's a fallacy.
Yes.
Fluid compensation. Finding new meanings.
Frame it as a disaster, then you've got to take any risk necessary to fix the problem. If, on the other hand, things are going well and they're starting to go a little better, well, then you would take the sure thing and go a little bit better. And so that's why Trump frames it as a disaster, so you'll take the risk of whatever it is he's doing. Yeah, absolutely, Kit.
And
There
spectrum.
there are fascists on both sides of the aisle. We
Well, I don't
agree.
know if fascist is quite right, but people who
Yeah, I'm waving
engage
at you, Shark.
in sort of inappropriate logic to trick you. It's
I'd be curious to see
across
which
the
ones you
board.
think are on the
I was pulling my
on the left.
hand out from under my cat to
Yep.
wait back.
Sorry, you
That's
didn't
very
pick one as
understandable,
well.
sure.
Yeah, if you couldn't see the left swerve to it, that's kind of part of the
No,
problem
we're
because
asking
they
you,
were
Kit.
all-
No, I'm asking you for an example.
Oh, I'll give you some examples. So, the debate about tariffs is quite a complicated one. I don't have a position, but I wouldn't say it's everybody agrees tariffs are bad. It's just really complicated. I wouldn't say that. I don't know the science about whether,
So Kit, let's talk about tariffs for a second.
I'm not qualified.
one of the
to, but I know
benefits
there's
of-
a debate.
Yeah,
I'm not
the
qualified
debate.
to.
I am,
There's a debate.
and so I'll bring you up to speed.
No, I don't want to be
The-
up to speed. What I'm saying is there is a debate. I'm not debating.
There's
Yeah,
a
the
debate
debate
on
isn't the one that
anything.
the right and left.
Ignorance?
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
the
you have
debate
to-
that's
you
being
don't-
had between the Republicans and the Democrats is not the debate that people can actually have that's rational.
Yeah,
The
sorry,
debate
you
that can
missed
be
my
had
point.
that's
Sorry,
rational.
Dr. Sayers, you're missing my point. I'm saying the examples.
Well,
could
you
be
said
more
that you
neutral
have
ones.
examples of a place where there's a left and a right debate, but I don't believe you do. I believe you think you do because you don't know enough about it, and because you don't know it, you assume that there is a rational debate to be had over that issue.
Well, economics is one of the most controversial subjects that's full of debate just about on whether you should be isolationist or whether you should be globalist.
No,
whether
that's
you're
not a question at all.
mercantilist. Do you know what a mercantilist is?
No, that's.
Oh,
not-
tell me about
familiar
what's a
with it?
mercantilist.
A mercantilist is a old-fashioned version of tariffs, and you close your economy, make the French brandy very expensive, and tell everybody they should drink English beer. My version of mercantilism. So this is a really age-old debate. My simple point, and it's
The fact
broader
that
than,
it's an age-old
no,
debate
Dr. Sayers, just let me finish. My
further
simple point
defends the
is-
fact that we have
my-
empirical
no,
evidence
no.
to defend one
Dr.
side versus
Sayers,
the
my
other.
simple
That's like
point
saying
is-
climate change has a debate because we've talked
Of
about
course
it.
it does.
No.
Well, do you know who Dr. Judith Curry is?
Oh, see,
Please tell me more.
Well, she is she has a doctorate in, I think, climate science. She used to be
Great.
on the United Nations advisory board about climate science. She disagrees.
With
So she is
Tariffs
she is
or
99%
with
of
climate
scientists.
change?
with whether
No, you
whether
jump it around
anthropogenic
different.
climate change can be reversed. Is that like because here's how it works. Every level of
Well,
lies
well,
about the
tell me
science
how it
start,
works. Are
like
you a climate
layer
change-
down.
Are you,
So which
sorry, are you a
grifter are you
climate-
listening
are
to
you a
on
climate
this?
science expert as well as a tariff expert? That's you're a polymath, my friend.
I am in fact a polymath, Kit.
Oh my goodness. Well,
It's interesting
hell
that
of a
you'll
lot
talk
smarter
about
than you.
things that you know nothing about.
Yeah,
but
you
won't
admittedly
listen to
said
him
you don't know
talk
anything
you
about
don't
it,
know
but
who
you wanna
Dr.
debate it.
Judith
knows
Curry
about.
is. Do you know who Judith Curry is?
You
That's
just
not
like
the point.
yapping, it seems.
No. Do you know who Dr. Judith Curry is?
Kid, nobody
she is
thinks
a
you're
climate
smart.
scientist who disagrees.
Yeah, we know.
So
Good. You
I
found
would
the
say
one
it's not.
scientist who disagrees. That doesn't mean your side has any validity, and it doesn't mean you're smart because you know somebody's name.
I don't
Uh,
pretend to
So
be
once
I
smart.
again,
wanted
Kit, what's the
I don't
disagreement
pretend to be
over?
smart. I don't
Because
pretend
the
to be an expert,
people
but what I
who
do say is
grift you
there
on
are
climate
controversies.
science say, first, it's not happening. Second, if it is happening, it's not people. Third, if it is people, we can't do anything about it. And fourth, if we can do anything about it, we shouldn't. The only
can I-
place where you can
Well,
have an
Dr. Sayers,
argument
that's
is
a
whether
straw
or
man
not we
argument.
should make a
You're
difference.
just
Those are the
engaging-
four levels of
you're
the argument.
engaging in a logical
Negotiation and
fallacy.
appeal to
Right,
authority, no doubt.
You're
But it's not a
engaging in a
straw
logical
man. I've
fallacy
laid
because
out
that's-
what the current
because
debates
that's
are.
not their position at all. And
Great.
if you knew
What is it?
anything about it, they would say that the forecasts of catastrophic climate change are at the very extreme end of the forecast. The more likely, and what I say, more than likely, probable outcomes are far less extreme than the most extreme forecasts. So it's not a binary black or white,
Right.
which
So
is another logical
there's
fallacy.
just the
It's a
conversation
question
I
of
had
degree.
with you. At the very end of it, you could say, we can do something about it, but should we? And the question is, who are the
No,
people who are
that's not the
suffering
debate.
from this? And when it's poor people in South Africa that don't get food and suffer from plague, well, they're not worth as much economically, so it's really not that bad. That's
so you
the
just change
argument
into
against.
a racist thing.
It is a racist
You're
thing. It is a
100%
Every time
functionally.
you
thing.
speak, You engage in logical fallacy. You just
It is a
changed the goalpost
functionally
and made
imperialist
it
set of
into a
assumptions.
racist. You don't know what my race is, my friend. So, and you don't know what connection I have with South Africa. So, you just shouldn't speculate, and you shouldn't change the goalpost and start talking about racisms. I'm saying there's a genuine body of climate scientists who do not necessarily agree to the extent of probably what your beliefs in climate science are. So it's a controversy. So you can't just say there's no debate by saying there's no debate. There is
How
a
many
debate.
clients?
I think it's
Sayus,
Mike
you're muted, Sayus.
How many
Um,
climate scientists disagree with
Sayus, we
climate
can't
change?
hear you.
Well, there's a
Oh, you might have
debate,
fucked
Andy,
up his-
about the consensus. It's
A very small percentage.
No, it's
The
not a very small
2021. Dude, I've just literally looked it up.
Well,
I know,
think
but
Sayus-
even that's contentious,
a
Andy.
2000
You
a
make yourself look
2021
Andy, but even
study
that's contentious.
found that
This idea that there's a
99% of
consensus is a
peer-reviewed
controversy.
scientific literature
Yeah, I
agrees
agree,
that
Kit,
climate
100%.
change is human caused.
Yeah, but
A
if you look into that,
2013
that's
study
disputed,
found that
Andy.
97%
Yeah,
of
but-
peer-reviewed
okay.
papers
All
agreed
right,
that
no.
climate change is human caused. An American Association of Advanced Science estimates that 97% of climate scientists agree that climate change is human caused. Leading science organizations around the world agree that climate change is human caused, including the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change.
Well, do you
The
believe
idea
the
that
United
there's no
Nations is
consensus on
subject to any
The idea
political
that there is no consensus on
Andy?
climate change
Clearly
is
you
a
didn't get all
myth
the money, right?
used by climate deniers to show doubt. However, the scientific community agrees that climate change is not natural and is caused
Just
by
listen to
humans.
yourself.
Okay, I just wanted to stop because Dr. Sayus had touched on something that no one said, which was like, well, who's it going to impact? What if we said no using
All of
coal-
us.
No, just hear me out. What if we said for people in Africa who use coal for power or whatever, burning natural gas?
Where
or
nobody's
whatever,
saying
they no
that.
longer do that. Well, and secondly, the biggest problem is countries like China, right? And even if they are starting to go green, they're still like the largest emitters in the world. It's like the people who
Yeah,
dump
because
all
they're
the trash
bigger
into the
and they have
ocean.
more population. Of course.
Yes.
And they aren't using the same
world doesn't
scrubbers
care.
on their.
It's
Yeah,
futile.
the-
It's like
the
being in
Earth
a
isn't gonna
relationship
care.
where
So
you
you're
say,
saying
I'm going to be
we
monogamous,
shouldn't do
but your
anything
partner
because
says she
China's
won't
not
be.
doing anything. We should. The rest of the world should just
Okay.
stop doing something
No,
else.
I never made that argument, Ruben.
Then what? Then what is your argument?
What I said is it's a little silly to have an ocean cleanup project when India just continues to dump more than we can clean up into the
So how
ocean.
is
Oh,
it
so we
different than what
just
I
let the
said?
plastic just fucking
Yeah,
rot
so
in the
how is
middle
that
of the
different than What I
ocean?
just said, dude.
Maybe
I
you
just said
stop the
because they're
problem
not doing
first.
anything, we
So-
should stop doing. You're not. Dude,
So,
you're
voice-
fucking so disingenuous.
You hear me, Murkoff?
Yeah, you can hear you now.
Yeah,
Sorry.
great. So why don't we combine Kit's desire for climate change control and his desire for
Well, hey, Dr. Sayers, why don't you
Tariffs.
stop characterizing my views, because you get it wrong every time, and just ask a question or put forward a fact.
Right.
Don't
So
try and characterize.
to voice his point, we have in the past worked internationally in order to stop doing things that harm the environment. We stopped the emissions of CFCs. We have a global monitoring network.
China started
see
doing
it-
it again, by the way.
Right, and then we go after them,
Oh.
and that is a good use of tariffs against Russia for invading Ukraine. The sort of thing where you harm another person's economy because they are doing something wrong. That's a very useful.
So we should have done
thing
it
you
to
can do with
China
tariffs.
30 years ago, right? I mean, that's
not
the
only
argument.
that voice, and here's the thing. Here's the real debate voice. Not should we have unilateral tariffs against China or not, but rather should we work with them by making it so that if they don't work with us, they hurt, or should we have an international set of tariffs against them? And in fact, we have that system in place. We had a World Trade Organization, and we could have brought them to court to do that. But instead, Donald Trump, when told, hey, we have systems for doing this, it's a good idea. Obama was weak on China, and he was. We should take them to task for the things
Is there
they're
a word
doing.
limit on your questions, Dr. Sayers?
I'm asking you a question. I'm helping. I'm
No,
having
it's
a
his
you're
room.
helping
He
us.
can
Yeah.
have as many
Where's
words
the
as he
question?
likes.
Where's the question?
So, once
He's
again,
talking to voice, not even
Donald?
you, kid.
Yeah, Donald Trump had a bilateral trade war instead of going to the World Trade Organization where everyone would have sided with America and hurt China even more. But he wanted to be big and he wanted to be unilateral. So that's not a debate. Donald Trump did it wrong. There is a debate, but it's not the one over what they're actually proposing when it comes to politics. That's how we end up not having a left-right debate that can be reasonable, even Kit, your point. Climate change. There is no, what's the degree to which some people are going to suffer if we control climate change, and where's that middle? That would be a good debate to have, Kit, but it's not what politics has on the left and right. Instead, it such thing as climate change, and that's what we're running with.
Pause. Good. You want to go, Voice?
Sure. I was just going to say, I mean, in terms of the climate models and stuff, it's kind of fascinating what all we know, but there's also still a lot that we don't know. I think some of what Kit was saying was basically along the lines of like the extreme ideology that gets peddled to prevent carbon emissions, for example, is often inaccurate. Like the estimates for how high the ocean levels will rise. And when you point to what the actual rise is guessed at by the ICC or whatever, it's so small, but then people are like, but still that few inches
So
over
small.
100 years is going to destroy everything. These things. And it's like the goalposts shift.
Voice, the question, the goalposts do shift because for two reasons. One, everyday people just don't know what they're talking about. But if you talk to climate scientists, they've been very consistent about the number of degrees Celsius leading to the certain types of outcomes that you can see and the variance around that number of degrees Celsius. So if we're having a debate amongst scientists about what the trade-offs were for human beings, and we're talking about people in climate change, and we're talking about people who are in economics, and we're talking about people who study disease, then we'd have a whole different question. But that isn't politics today. Politics today is no such thing as climate change, or there is such thing as climate change, and it's really sloppy and stupid, right?
Okay.
But you can't find the good side to a completely wrong idea.
Let me offer an olive branch. I agree, and politics necessarily oversimplifies people into two camps, and as we
there's a black and white fallacies that's predicated on, right?
You know, and a lot of these things are questions of degree. Now, for what it's worth, I was an environmental protester many years ago, and I still hold those values. What concerned me was the overselling of the climate problem, which, if you'd told me 30 years ago we'd had the type of climate change that we see today, which there is some. I don't deny that, but it is nothing like the severity that, unfortunately, a lot of the environmentalists 30 years ago warned about. And the problem is that you lose some credibility. But the problem is, if you try and send out a mild message, nobody cares. And so I understand from a political point of view, you have to kind of over-egg it. But
I think that's a bad policy.
There's
You know,
areas in there.
So go ahead, Andy.
In the UK, I live in Scotland. We have never had a wildfire in winter. We did this year. We have never had a Category 1 hurricane in Scotland or the UK, ever. But we've been getting more and more severe weather. I nearly lost my shed into next door's garden because of a
Then you wouldn't be married anymore.
Because of
really
a Category 1 hurricane.
Andy, I agree.
California is on fire. Places in this world are reaching temperatures that far exceed what would be classed as a normal sort of like gradient. Sea levels are
I'm
not finished.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
Sea levels have risen 2.11 millimeters year on year.
I was going to say those are two very different numbers.
Well, I did correct myself. Since 1999. These aren't things that people just pull out of their arse.
Though.
No,
Millimeters.
you'll be surprised
that's
that you're
10
agreeing with me.
that's an inch every decade, right? And that can make a real difference.
But what we were
to
told
offer an
is that
olive
some
branch.
of these. One more flap of the olive branch, and I'll stop. So
Sure.
what we were expecting that some, I live in the South Pacific, so some of these small Pacific nations were kind of poster boys or girls for places that were going to disappear under the water. They haven't. They may do in 100 years' time, 120. They haven't. They're still there. I know people who live on these islands. Sure, they've had storms, but they oversold it, Andy, and that's where the credibility
So
gap
Kit,
arose. Okay,
it depends on to whom and by whom, right? If you were an environmental activist going out with Greenpeace, you probably oversold in order to gin up your emotions. So you're from an extreme subgroup was oversold. When you come to the public knowledge, right? Who does the middle person think? What do they think is going on? It's nowhere near the reality of how bad things really are. Let's go to Jazz and then Voice.
So, Kit, I would like to respond to something you said, that the extreme conditions don't seem as extreme to you. So I'd give you an anecdote. The highest recorded temperatures on Earth were recorded in the last 10 years. Every couple of years, it was exceeded by the last year. So the hottest the Earth has ever been, the hottest recorded temperatures were recorded within the last decade. Obviously, we've had really, really bad fires. I live in a place where it's below sea level, so a couple millimeters a year really makes a difference when you'll lose half the place. And I understand that you see that in your part of the earth, wherever you live, you don't see as extreme changes, but there are other people. What do you think would be the adequate amount of climate change or extreme weather conditions where you're like, okay, now this is serious? What do you?
How long have we been recording temperatures?
Yeah. So I'll try and rip through and answer those ones for you, Jess. So begs the question. Recorded temperatures, we've only been accurately doing that for 2 years. Obviously, the Earth used to be much, much warmer than it is now. Antarctica used to have forests. That's not
There you go.
But so we've had way, way warmer than currently, and it does change things. Of course, it means places, the vegetation changes differently. Yes, you're right. A few millimeters, a few centimeters may make some coastal settlements no longer really viable. And unfortunately, but that's, if you look at population movements at different times, we all lived down on the river deltas, we lived on the coast. Yeah, it might mean that it's not a good idea to build your house on the beachfront, and no longer will beachfront properties be worth,
Well, Kit, it's not about the wealthy beachfront properties. It's about the everyday person, not in wealthy nations, that can't handle their house being destroyed.
Yeah, you've got the
Bangladesh.
I think the other
when is a good time to address cancer?
Well, hold on.
When is a good When is a good time to address cancer? When you first spot it, or maybe 2-3 years down the line when it's already ravaged your body? When do you think the best time to do something about the cancer is?
That's an excellent point.
Yeah, the answer, Andy, is that climate change is a long-term problem, and
it is a cancer.
It's not. It doesn't happen.
So it's cancer.
That disappears. Yeah,
I'm sorry if you don't get the analogy and you don't like it. It is a cancer.
I get the analogy, and I get the warning signs, but the solution is not as obvious as getting that mole removed.
Yeah,
it might be.
But the solution isn't trying to deny that the cancer is there.
Well, here's the thing. It's been rebranded a lot of times, right? Back in the 60s,
I don't deny that.
Back in the 60s, they were worried about a coming ice age, right? Back in the 50s, 40s, 30s, it was the ice age was coming, and all the climate people were terrified that we were going to have another ice age. And then it changed to warming. Then it became global warming.
Left the last ice age.
And if you don't mind me finishing, Andy, now it's
Said
climate
the guy
change.
that interrupted me.
It was supposed to be my turn after Jazz. That's what Saya said. And then I let you say your thing, but it's cool.
Yeah, well, I'm a special person.
It's all right. I love you. Anyways, so that's the kind of thing that I have. The other thing is there's a lot of money in climate science, right? And if you tell everybody yeah, we'll record the data and stuff, and it's whatever, you might not get as much funding as if you're like,
where's there more money in extracting oil from the ground and selling it, or in the climate science? Where is there more money?
Yeah. Is there?
I'm just saying,
there's
more
what
profit in oil?
There's money everywhere. Is the point, right? Everybody wants money.
By how many extra orders of magnitude extra money is there in getting oil out of the ground and selling it?
Well, we're using it, right? We're using it to power the world right now.
More profit, less.
Yeah.
How about answering the
money.
question he asked rather than answering another
money in
question?
climate science.
No, you're saying we
money
use
in oil.
climate
Where's the
science
more
isn't
money?
helping.
Where
us.
is the more money?
Wait. I want us to hear this. He said, all I'm saying is, let's hear the Mott and Bailey. Go.
Yeah, all I'm saying is that there's money in all of it, right? But right now,
There we go. He just claimed that climate science is fundamentally corrupt because money is in it, when pressed on the issue that climate science is pushing against a gigantic, thousands of times larger industry than climate science. Voice said, all I'm saying is that there's money in it. That is a Mott and Bailey fallacy. Invisibly going from an indefensible to an agreeable
It's not
argument.
indefensible.
You
Look at-
cannot defend the argument that there is climate science that's so big it can take on the fucking oil industry.
Sayers.
The size
Or
of
not
climate
even the
science
oil
and the
industry.
money.
Pollution of all corporations,
Hello.
of plastics
What about
or
solar
anything.
panels, electric cars, subsidies for green, like all the green related
Still
subsidies?
not
Compare
even
that.
close.
Compare
Hundreds
that.
of
Compare that.
billions.
Compare that.
Yes, oil makes a lot of money because people use it. We drive our cars to work. We power our.
When asked that, the question was, you're saying there's motivated reasoning because money is available. The motivation is on the side of oil, not the green side.
Well, there's deficit money available in the green, but there's profit money available. There are different types of money. Like
Yes, there's money for everyone. Is the point I'm making.
If there's a money sinkhole that's
Mott
not
and
actually
Bailey.
profiting your GDP, then money that is profiting the GDP.
Look, if I'm not in oil and
They're
I want to
different types of money.
subsidize green energy and I'm in government and I go ahead and invest a shitload in everything green related and
There
then
you go.
pump subsidies into it and then do that and I have the climate scientists who are also getting paid saying the world can end, let's everyone buy an electric car and everyone goes out and does it. That's a different story than like, hey, the
Do
guy
climate scientists support
There's a
electric cars by and large?
trillions. Yes, they did. For a long time,
No.
liberals were sucking everyone's dicks about
Whoa, you just invisibly
Tesla.
moved from filleting
Well, no, you guys made Elon Musk.
liberals
You
from
guys
climate
to filleting,
scientists.
yeah.
People who are engaged in climate scientists and policy discussions in economics don't suggest that electric cars are the way forward. They,
They
talk
did for a
about
while.
mass transit, and they always
Sayers.
have.
Not
Can I answer?
always.
Can I answer something? The voice. So I just wanted to answer something you said earlier. So because it was different in the 1940s and 1950s and whatever. So what you're saying is that you don't trust it because science grows and evolves and changes.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's
I was
what
gonna
science
say
does.
No, I know it does. But if I tell you where science is
But-
lacking,
but
for
the-
example, cloud models, everyone will say, no, we know enough. We understand it well enough. We don't even understand how clouds will react to the increased carbon emissions. That's something that we are very bad at modeling. We've, for example, have clouds that have formed
Okay,
from
but
CO2
that's
gases
not what I'm
that are
asking
more
you. That's-
reflective.
That's not
But
what I'm
this is-
asking. Hold
it's
on.
something that
voice,
never
voice.
gets discussed.
Hold on,
wait,
voice,
hold on.
voice.
In
Hold
the
on. That's
50s
what I'm asking you.
Wait,
You-
real quick.
what you
In the
said- what-
50s. Okay.
I'm sorry, the Rubinator. What you said is you don't trust it because it was something different in the 1940s and the 1950s.
I trust it. I said that there's an
But that's one of the
agenda
reasons
that
you-
keeps
you-
shifting
you
around.
pointed to.
Why is it an agenda? Why is it not just science advancing?
That's a great question, Ruben. Money is the answer. Very good.
No.
Well, you know,
Ruben
that's
was
not what I'm saying.
asking
You're-
by saying it is just science
Why are you
advancing.
assuming
They're
It's
wrong
not.
about it
It's
being
not
an
just
agenda.
science anymore. We learned that with the whole Wuhan Lab League shit. Everything has become so
Wuhan
politicized.
Lab
Why?
League?
Why that has nothing to do with any of that?
Literal
Okay,
scientists.
guys. Voice has clearly just started. That was a red herring, right? That's where you bring up an unrelated topic
Yes,
in order
it's
to
not related
distract
to
from the
science.
conversation. You just threw in a way to derail the thread, right?
Yep.
Get a different topic going because the point being made is, and what you did not address, is that science doesn't need to have a big agenda to change. In fact, if it
However,
had a big
it
agenda
does.
to change, it would be consistent. Instead, if it was science advancing and knowledge changing, you would expect things to change over time. So what you would expect to see if it were an agenda was a consistent agenda, but it's changed. If you would expect it to be science that is learning and growing over time, you would expect it to learn and grow over
Yeah, but
time.
you can't
We see
use it as
learning
a
and
source
growing
of
over
truth.
time.
You can't use it as a source of truth and say, yeah, it's going to change next week.
Voice. Your
That's
alternative
science.
options. Your alternative options for sources of truth are Jesus told me. So while it
No,
may
probably
be a
not.
flickering,
Probably
while
more
it may
later.
be a
You can-
flickering candlelight at our feet in the dark, it is the only
See, that's
light
a black
we have.
and white dichotomy. That's a false
Oh,
dichotomy.
what's our other
You can-
option?
Well, I can tell
Yeah,
you. You
what's
can
the other
have.
option?
What's
you
our
can-
other
you can have a-
rational basis for accumulating knowledge?
Answer
Go.
coming. So you can have an appreciation for the scientific method and all the advances, but you don't necessarily. Science has a track
That's a
record
different
of
question.
as
That's different. I didn't
progress,
claim science
and
is
it's-
everything.
and
I
it's
claim that
often
science is our
slightly
only
too
rational basis
confident.
for moving forward.
And
Look,
so you
is
can have a
science,
trust in science, which is where
There's a different question. There's a different question. I didn't say that we should believe every one of the studies 100%. I said it's in fact in the dark. but the only light we have. It is often mistaken. There's often there's always problems and self-contradictions. It casts shadows. There's lots of problems, but you don't have an alternative because there's no other rational basis for decision making.
But what you can do is take what science says with a grain of salt based on everything you just said. It's a tiny light. We can't really trust it.
As opposed to
You don't
what?
just
Well,
blindly
as opposed to
say
what,
this is the
boys?
truth.
Can science be biased?
hold on.
Is bias allowed to seep into the scientific community?
Hold on,
100%.
Septic.
Go ahead, Jess.
Okay.
Septic. Hold on. He said take science with a grain of salt. As opposed to what? What else are we taking to combat that?
Well, I'm just saying
look at its
with
track
the understanding that bias can seep into it, and so it's like that's why I was bringing up, profit money versus deficit money. It's like anytime that an investment is made into any product, whether it be the study of climate change or oil, there has to be a produced benefit to someone, and so when you're talking about a field that incurs a deficit and doesn't actually produce an increase to any kind of GDP.
Okay, so here's the answer to your question.
The fuck? Then who is
let me
benefiting
restate
from that
it because
science?
people aren't buying your question, so I'll fix it. But do you want to answer first, Jess?
Well,
So,
do you get it?
so,
You get
so
what I'm saying?
septic. So money in anything equals bad because there's money in it.
No,
Right,
I'm
and that's
saying
not the
money
situation.
invested into something creates an outcome, and what is that outcome? In oil, the outcome is
automatically
profit.
corrupt because
money's
money for
involved.
distortion. It's not a distortion, but it
Except
can distort.
except there is a value created. That value is not wealth for people. Instead, it's the generation of
Democrat
knowledge.
Party, maybe?
No, it's the generation.
Maybe
it's the generation of knowledge. Which, if the Republican Party would like to stand against any generated knowledge, then it must necessarily not help
But what is
them.
the value of
But
generated
by
knowledge?
Again, what is the value of knowledge?
Wait,
What
I
is the
know.
value?
No,
what's
does
the value of being rational? Why don't we just ask Jesus to solve the problem?
What I'm saying is, does a bias to results of studies benefit if it benefits a party and that party continues funding into a deficit program?
All of the
Right?
studies on smoking were against the Republican Party too. Ruben?
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I'm not
50
saying
years ago,
anything
we
about
used
that.
to
I'm
use
saying that
something
anytime that you have
Let Ruben
an
talk.
investment in a deficit,
Yeah,
hold on.
Ruben's been patient.
Okay, go
Hold
for it,
on.
whatever.
50 years ago, we used to use a product called asbestos as insulation for homes and buildings.
And
all
let
that.
it.
And
Let
then
it
they
be.
realized it safe. At the time, they didn't. At the time, it was safe. At the time, they didn't know it was a problem. Then science came along and discovered, oh shit, this shit's dangerous. We have to take it out of every fucking building that has it and re-insulate everything. Now, do you think that was some kind of great conspiracy, or do you think science just advanced and we realized, oops, we were wrong? We have more knowledge now. We have better testing.
You're
now.
absolutely correct.
In the
Science advanced and we realized, oops, we were wrong.
Now this addresses Septic's point.
Should we have not done it? Because, well, if we take the asbestos out and put something else in, then they're just going to figure out that that's bad in 10 years.
Did it
Is that
did
what
it
we should have
benefit the
done?
producers of
Hold on.
non-asbestos
Okay.
installations?
What if it did?
Wait.
What if it did? Does that mean it's automatically corrupt?
I'm not saying it's corrupt. I'm just saying that someone benefits from these.
Yeah, that doesn't mean that it's wrong information. Okay.
I'm not
So-
saying it means it's wrong information.
Then-
What
then
I'm saying
shut
is
up about it.
maybe
How do you keep
bias.
saying shit
All right,
you're
we're
not
gonna have to
saying?
fix Septic because he won't stop.
Yep.
He can't stop.
I'm not kidding. I'm not stopping.
I mean, you're saying that because
I'm
money
enjoying
is
talking
being
to
made.
Voice and South here. All right, but to Septic's point, there was a time when we found out that the lead added to gasoline was causing brain damage to fetuses and children, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what did we do? We found out that, and we voted to get rid of it, except the Republicans for another decade and a half. That
That's
was
cool.
science that was against a particular party, but at the same time, absolutely factual. This happens all the time. The people with the corporate interests that are harmed by the knowledge we accumulate try to throw chaff into the air so that you don't notice that the knowledge has accumulated. So while our information is always limited and it's always going to have self-contradictions until you work harder at it and then you only move a little down the road, we can know where the wall is because we definitely ran into a wall. So we know that oil and gasoline causes brain damage. And yet the people who benefit by pretending there's no wall and running people into it, well, they're going to fight really hard to make it so that you don't believe that science. They did it with oil and gasoline. They did it with cigarettes. They're doing it with climate change.
Yep. So
during COVID, I think it was a great example of very quickly changing science, right? We don't know, we're studying, but everybody every other day was speaking just like you, as this is what the science says, and this is 100%.
Do you have an alternative?
Yes, it's called nuance. It's called you don't just blindly parrot it and say this is fact.
Okay, so boys,
blindly go against it.
No, you don't blindly go against it. You say, I have read one study that says this, and you're like, it's science now, it's fact, they published it. That's not how it works.
Voice,
like,
if your argument is,
So you want to do nothing about COVID until they know 100% what it is?
No, I'm saying is
you don't think we should have worn masks?
When you see a
shouldn't have
study
done
that
anything?
you don't like, you say, "Oh, this is just one study, and it's not right. That's the data's bad." Blah blah. If you don't like that, until it changes, it becomes the rule of life theory. You would get blocked for saying it on Twitter, etc. On Reddit, that you would get banned.
Look, forget that nonsense.
Oh
my god. If your argument is that the climate science has a variation in the potential outcomes, and we should consider the high and low variation and the probabilities of those distributions, and then weight those distributions appropriately and compare those against the things that we could do and the consequences of those actions, so that we have a range of actions and consequences, why, that's exactly what the policymakers, scientists, and all of them are actually doing. Then they come up with a policy, for example, carbon cap and trade, which was almost passed under George W. Bush. That was a really good idea. It also, we did the same thing when it came to CFC cap and trade. We cap it, we trade rights to do it, and we lower it over time so that we can transition but keep the economic model as to what's allocating the resources. That way you don't have to have a command economy solution to the problem. It's a really good solution, and it can work worldwide.
I have one that might work better. Rather than imposing tax penalties, you could offer tax incentives and tax breaks. The difference is that the government that does
Build Back Better did exactly that. It got rid of the tax break for running dirty coal, and it gave tax incentives for building clean energy. It did exactly that. That's the policies that work.
And then
what Dr. Say is when you I think you touch on what I find a really interesting point, which is kind of risk analysis. And when you're trying to forecast further and further into the future to assess a risk and then decide what resources or effort you want given your degree of confidence in the risk. And of course, risk is two things. Risk is the probability, but it's also the calamity or the severity of the risk. So a small risk of an asteroid hitting the planet is still a big risk because it would be,
2% should be multiplied by the probability of the land that it could hit, and then how many people could die. So there's something like an extra 1,000 people that are going to die from the asteroid given multiple replications of the asteroid. That's how you would weight that outcome.
Yeah.
Right?
So those are important things, and I think that idea of risk has probably those two components that gets lost in the argument. So
Probability and degree.
Yep. Probably exactly. So part of my, I'm an environmentalist, but what annoys me about the climate change argument is that it's oversimplified and it squishes out other legitimate risks that are arguably just as, should be weighted as heavily as climate change. So whether it's malaria or whether it's the 6,000 nuclear warheads that we have pointing at Russia.
Right, and when people are activists, as you pointed out, you have to get people behind you, and you can't pay attention to everything all at once, right? So people are trying to gin up support for their area, and in that way, rhetoric exceeds what the actual science says. However, that rhetoric being somewhat beyond what the science says is counterbalanced by an incredible amount of well-funded rhetoric that says exactly the opposite. So if you say it's a 90% chance and actually it's but if you say it's a 90% chance and the other person says it's not happening at all and the science says no, it's 50%, give or take 10%, right? That means these other side is just so against what reality is. This isn't even a debate anymore. And it's what's really happening in the world today. We're just pretending like things don't exist. Sanity.
I think the us and them thing is a little bit disingenuous and probably not a good policy either.
And insanity.
Yeah, it's kind of
I agree.
It's easy to create an us or them to win on by arguing that isn't real. right? And then people have to disagree with you.
That's the political reality. That's the
Yes.
binary extremes.
And that
The
gets at your first
reality, the
question,
academic-
why don't we have things on the left that are examples of these fallacies? And the answer is the everyday person engaging in the political world is already subject to an incredible amount of right-wing bias information that's not just bias, just straight up lies about reality.
AOC said the world was going to
Propaganda.
end in 10 years. Do you remember that? Leftist,
So that-
world's going to end.
Okay, that's, again, red herring, Kit. That was
Who
my
was that?
counterpoint.
AOC said the world was
we'll
gonna
get
end
to
from
whatever the
climate
hell
change in like 5 to 10
AOC,
years.
the famous world scientist and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who knows exactly what's going to happen, right? Except
Socialist
maybe she's a politician, and maybe that would be a good example. Fine.
I was
but-
told last Trump administration, world was going to end. He was the Hitler.
Mm-hmm.
Except this time he has a
Except
plan.
this
It's
time.
written in
Yes,
Project
this time.
2025,
He's really gonna
and
do
he
it.
is implementing the plan page after page to disrupt our
But I
democratic
mean,
system.
But
He's
only the
already
Republicans make
violated
false
the
claims
rule
and
that the
act crazy.
Congress decides what to spend money on. He's been told by the judiciary, no, Congress decides what to spend money on. And even though Congress decides how it's spent, and the judiciary has told Trump that he's wrong about it, he continues to do whatever he wants, which means
I mean,
that
they
his
can
plan
stop him
to
if they want,
eliminate
right?
our three-part government and centralize power in the executive branch, which was written in Project 2025,
Sounds a
is
lot like
exactly
AOC's
what
speech.
he is doing.
Yeah.
So
it's a
yeah,
mirror
back
image
when he
for
didn't
the-
know what he was
if
doing,
Congress
he messed it up.
Could or had the right to, they
Like a
would
mirror
do
image.
it.
Except for the Congress is ran by the Republican Party, which is the same party as the executive, so it's all taken over.
Yeah.
The ones that the people voted for.
The
I mean,
Republican Party
they
is too
actually
scared to
didn't
get
vote for
primaried.
them. They voted for progressive
So
policies.
they're not. They're too scared.
Honestly, if that's the case, if it's true that the Congress right now fully supports the act, do whatever he wants, right? Except they're not passing laws to make that happen. They won't pass those laws to make it happen. Because they wouldn't actually vote to do stupid things like end USAID.
Exactly.
And luckily,
Congress
we can actually talk about this
does.
stuff because it's important. So
I appreciate the conversation, Kit. My suggestion is don't think that place to debate ideas anywhere, but when you start going to things that are just factually like lies, right? I don't think you should.
yeah, as they say.
Yep.
Bye bye.
I mean, my question.
Oh, because people.
Misinformation, stupidity.
Yeah.
Terrible.
It's Russia.
No. Bossy
Voted
situation,
for-
so people were willing to take framing effect. It was very effective.
The
Was,
ratcheting
against their
effect
policy.
has really incredibly right wing.
That showed us that Donald Trump wasn't too. People were supporting Dick Cheney.
Why do you think voting cycle?
I
think more
I
people-
think
He activated.
He didn't
the
actually
voters
go more
to get the
Republican. He
facts.
got us more voters.
He got more
Less
than
people voted
Kamala